Go back to attendee. So hello, sorry about that, everybody. My name is Tom Fulcher, and let's see if Carol, you can move the slides. Oh, there we go. I am a business analyst with the Small Business Development Center here in Maricopa County. I have a certified global business professional, which is a certification offered by the National Association of Small Business International Trade Educators on export. I used to be a VP of international trade for a small company, and I've traveled now all 7 continents, and it says 15. I think I've been over 25 countries now, and worked with a lot of entrepreneurs in areas of planning, modeling, branding, marketing, preparation for investor capital, lending, grants, general business development, and of course, export. I'm part of our capital team and expert in angel and venture capital, and also part of our export team. So welcome and thank you for joining me today. I will be acting as your moderator as we move through this. So Carol, if we can go a slide ahead. So today you'll hear from us, and we'll be bringing up the U.S. Commercial Services after me, and then we've got a representative from Ex-Im Bank, the Export-Import Bank in the United States, and finally GIAS Global, a local freight forwarder, and finally a little Q&A and wrap up. At the end of each person's session, we'll try to allow for a question or two at that point as well. And what I'll do is, for example, when Fernando Jimenez with Commercial Services, our first speaker, is wrapping up, I'll join him on screen and be able to then help with questions at that point. So Carol, next slide. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Maricopa SBDC. We're part of the Arizona Network and part of America's SBDC. We provide no charge, no fee counseling and coaching services, basically in business advising. And that ranges everything from startups to people who have grown their business tremendously, maybe exiting through sale, or maybe they've just grown too big to be considered a small business anymore, which we call graduating. And that can include capital, lending, marketing, planning, export, all kinds of things. We're soup to nuts here to help you with your business. We also offer a variety of trainings, such as this program, and other resources like market research. We have a group in San Antonio that does research for us. We have subscriptions to Ibis World and other properties that we can then share with you as well to do some deeper research. We have 15 counselors in Maricopa County, and in the state, we have 10 SBDC centers throughout Arizona. I believe we also have Mark Schmidt from one of our centers joining us. Mark is, in addition to Carol Poole, Carol Laser Poole is with us today, and myself and Mark are the 3 NASBite CGBP, Certified Global Business Professionals, interested in helping you with your export business. You can find out more about the Maricopa SBDC and the services we offer, and we'll tell you a little bit more at the end about how to sign up. You can find more about us at maricopa-sbdc.com. Next slide. So we have 3 speakers with us today, and I'll go ahead and just introduce you to 3 speakers quickly. Fernando Jimenez, the Senior International Trade Specialist with U.S. Commercial Services. Sandra Donzella, the Deputy Managing Director of the Export-Import Bank of the U.S. Western Region, and Gustavo Ceballos, the President of GIAS Global. Our first speaker will be Fernando Jimenez. Fernando serves as a Senior International Trade Specialist of the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Services here in Phoenix, Arizona, since April of 2015. Responsible for export assistance in the Phoenix metro area and Northern Arizona, with an emphasis in safety and security and aerospace and defense sectors primarily. Mr. Jimenez previously served the state of Arizona as the International Trade and Investment Vice President at the Arizona Commerce Authority, formerly known as the Arizona Department of Commerce. He joined the Commerce Department in January 2001 as a small business rep for the Small Business Assistance Center, assisting and counseling public and small business owners in establishing, expanding, and relocating in the state. As VP of International Trade and Investment, he worked with small and medium-sized Arizona companies with their exporting efforts and promoted the state to foreign companies as a premier location for their U.S. expansion. In addition, he served as a staff to the CEO and President of the Arizona Commerce Authority for all Arizona-Mexico economic development cross-border activity. And the U.S. Commercial Services were thrilled as joining us at all of these events that we're doing on different destinations. We had Canada last time with Ruth Soberanis, and then we'll be having upcoming, you hear more about EU and Asia, and U.S. Commercial Services key partner with us, as well as Exim Bank and others that we'll be seeing down the line. But with that, Fernando, I know we're trying to work on being able to get you your camera accessible, but I will go ahead and turn it over to you for you to walk through your slides. And just whenever you're ready, say next slide, and Carol will advance the slide for you. I'll go off camera for now, and at your last slide, I'll jump back on.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. Appreciated. I still cannot open my camera, so you will not be able to see my beautiful tie that I'm wearing today. So anyway, so thank you very much for the invitation to the SBDC U.S. Commercial Service. It's part of the U.S. government. We are the main export promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are under the International Trade Administration. I'm going to talk briefly about what we can do to help U.S. companies export to foreign markets, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of Mexico as a good market for export. Next slide, please. In a nutshell, most businesses will ask, what is the benefit of having or requesting assistance from the U.S. government? So I think the government can open a lot of different doors for businesses abroad. It gives some recognition and some credibility to those businesses. So if companies choose to obtain our services, I think we can offer a lot of different insights into those markets that otherwise you cannot get access to. We also have a very expansive global network of more than 76 offices around the world, where we have local trade specialists that can help with on-the-ground knowledge of those markets. And they speak the language, they know the business customs, they know the industry sectors that they represent. So we have a very large footprint that is there for the use of U.S. businesses wanting to export U.S. products. And we have a domestic side of trade consultants, if you will, which is myself, Ruth, and Colin, my colleague, and Leandro here in the Phoenix office, that we offer our counseling services to help those companies get ready to export. So I think that's kind of the value that our agency can provide to U.S. exporters. On the right-hand side of my slide, we have the four main buckets of our business of our business services, if you will. So the first one is the export counseling portion, which is mainly where we help U.S. companies get ready to export. We also provide market intelligence, which encompasses what we have at trade.gov, which is our main webpage with a lot of different information about different markets. We offer services, which is the business matchmaking component. And we also offer what we call commercial diplomacy, which is sort of assisting companies with any barriers or obstacles they may face when going into foreign markets within either contracting or any other issues that may arise. Next slide, please. So the export counseling component, as I mentioned already, it's mainly us being able to assess that the companies are ready to export. We need to work with companies from the beginning to make sure that they know how to enter a market, which markets to choose, how to get paid, how to work the logistics, how to plan financing, market entry options. Let's see if I can. Now it's perfect. Now you can see. Great, thank you. So we help U.S. companies get ready to export, and at the same time we provide a counseling throughout the process. So that's kind of what how we're defined is we're two sections of the commercial service. One is us here, the domestic field, which are sort of account managers, right? We're helping companies domestically get ready to export. And then when we move to our foreign side, it's the next step, right? It's on the next step. So that we have different services from when we have our two different entities, if you will, even though we're one. You know, we're two groups, if you will. One domestic in the U.S. are here to help you and be your first point of contact, and then our folks on the ground that will actually help with anything on the ground on those specific markets. Another initiative that we have is the e-commerce innovation lab, which mainly focuses on e-commerce, globalization of websites, review, gaps, things that businesses need nowadays in order to have their website up to speed in order to compete globally. Next slide, please. Market intelligence, it's all the research and all those documents that we compile in our website. All the information on our website is available to anyone. This information is created and documented by our foreign trade offices mainly, and they're there to serve as a resource for companies. A product that I just use a lot is the country commercial guide, which is the first one. Most of the information you're going to see on my next slides about the Mexico market come out of the country commercial guide, which is prepared by our Mexico team and is updated on a yearly basis. So all those 125 country guides that we have, they're updated on an annual basis by our teams on the ground. So you can rely on that information in order to get market intelligence, best prospects, how to do business in country, even regulations, registration of products, et cetera, et cetera. Another great component of it is the customized market research. We do have a lot of research in that website, which is broken either by countries, by sectors. So all that information is also compiled there. We can also offer different services. As I mentioned, we offer services. Some of them are fee-based services. Some of them are free services. Our counseling services are free, obviously. Our fee-based services, just as an example, the initial market check is one of our main services, which we help U.S. companies make sure that the products are competitive and there is a market for them, which is an initial market search. And that's roughly $350. We can also prepare international company profile, which is this is mainly a report where we do due diligence on foreign companies wanting to do business with you or you wanting to do business with them. So this is a way to get some intelligence into the company to see if they're reliable, right? If they pay their bills, if they're in good standing with everything, with the laws and regulations of the specific country. So those are some of the services we can offer them. Next slide, please. Our bread and butter of the services that we offer are mainly in these slides, right? The business matchmaking is what pay the bills, if you will. I think these are the best services that we can offer to companies, specifically the Gold Key service, right? The one at the bottom. The Gold Key service is basically a matchmaking service where we can identify potential business partners in foreign markets by doing pre-screening. We will pre-screen those companies. We will contact them. We will make sure they're interested in your product or service, and we will actually broker a meeting between the U.S. company and the local firm in order for them to have a business dealing. So this service is the one that we get a lot of our success stories, if you will, and companies actually making those sales abroad. We also have a service where companies can promote their products, their services, their new products or launching a new product or doing a demonstration of the products, which is called a single company promotion. We can also initiate a partner search, which is basically a go-to service, but without all the matchmaking. We just provide the list of those prospective distributors, which are pre-vetted, and they know exactly that what the product is and what you're looking for. So it's not just a shotgun approach; it's a very customized service that we provide. And we can also we also offer some listings. We manage a couple of directories of either service providers overseas and service providers in the domestic market. Next slide, please. We also have a component which is the educational side, which is what we do here, trying to do outreach to potential new exporters. And we also have a component where we do events, right? So we have two events that we organize, which are on the left-hand side of my slide here, which is Discover Global Markets and Trade Winds. These two events are annual events that we organize. They're usually sector and Discover Global Markets is usually by sector, and those are usually here in the United States domestically. They move around the United States in different parts of the country with different industries, if you will, to showcase. Trade Winds, it's a little bit more of a worldwide event that we organize on an annual basis. The last one that we did went to Asia. So we visited 5 countries with 300 US companies. We broker appointments for them. We did briefings. So those are our 2 main signature events. We also conduct or organize certified trade missions, and those are mainly based on sector specific and going to an area of the world, right? We've done a couple of trade missions that touch to 3 countries: Spain, Portugal, and Italy, for say something. For aerospace companies or for safety security companies, you know, it depends on the mix that we have. We also organize international buyer programs to main trade shows that happen in the United States. So we recruit buyers from our foreign offices. Let's say that we recruit buyers from England, from Spain, from Nigeria, from Colombia, and they all come to these trade shows and to buy US products. So that's something that we offer as well. And we also participate in international trade fairs. We certify trade fairs for different organizations that organize trade fairs. And we also do trade show representation. Next slide, please. Commercial diplomacy, I think this is going to be the last of the services that we offer. We do have an arm that deals with advocacy. Advocacy, it's mainly helping U.S. companies have a fair shake when foreign governments are issuing tenders for contracts, right? So the U.S. companies can have a fair shot at these projects. So that's what the Advocacy Center does. We also can help with trade disputes, and we also can help companies with trade barriers, which is another component of what we do in the trade component. Next slide, please. So the Mexico market overview, as I mentioned before, most of this information is out of our country commercial guide. And just to begin with, this slide here is showcasing there are more than 20 leading export sectors for the Mexico market coming from the US. But our offices in Mexico have identified 6 main clusters, which are the ones listed here. It's aerospace and defense. Aerospace, Mexico has a very large civilian aerospace market that represents a huge opportunity for US companies. The country is the largest market in Latin America for defense products. and um, and is one of the most dynamic markets in the aerospace in the world. On the automotive sector, Mexico is the seventh largest automotive producer. So obviously there is a lot of opportunities in the supply chain of the automotive sector. In the energy and environmental technologies, this cluster includes oil and gas, renewables, and electricity. So there's a lot of opportunities, ongoing opportunities in the oil and gas and clean energy, because there's a lot of projects going on. But there is a role between the government and the private sector that has to be sorted out, right? Mexico's energy policy is still shifting from government owned and control to sort of being privatized, if you will. Industrial materials, we have to deal with advanced manufacturing. So obviously there is a lot of different needs for quality products and general services around manufacturing. ICT is also big. Mexico continues to modernize, and obviously it needs those platforms in order to play a more stable role. And now also diving into fintech as well, and cybersecurity technologies, which are major needs. Infrastructure and construction, this is a big proposal under the new administration of the López Obrador administration. They are building a lot of roads, they're constructing, they're building a train, they're building airports, refineries, rail, natural gas pipelines. So there's big opportunities in these six main sectors, if you will. Next slide. One of the considerations whenever you're going to open a new market, it's always good to protect your intellectual property, right? The IP protection is always key. So I guess the main point here is that if you're going to go to a foreign market, make sure that you're protected under IP law. Most of the laws in Mexico are not the same as in the US, and most of the IP protections may not transfer over to Mexico. So there may be some work needed there. Most of the companies may need to hire a local attorney or a local IP professional in order to register and to protect their property in Mexico. Also, the key of IP protection is that if you are going to go the way of registering your IP, you have to go also all the way to protect it, right? So that means consulting with the lawyers and having a team that can do that. We also recommend working with legal counsel in Mexico that are familiar to all the laws, and it can also protect you from the beginning with non-compete clauses and confidentiality agreements, disclosure provisions. So all that work has to be done beforehand. And obviously we have the IP resources in the US, the Pt2, which is a great asset and a great partner of ours. So for more information on that, visit stopfakes.gov. Next slide, please. Market overview. Mexico is the 16th largest economy in the world. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunities in the Mexico market. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the bottom line is that USMCA, which is the new trade agreement that preceded NAFTA, has opened a lot of doors for a lot of products to be able to enter the Mexico and the Canadian market, by the way, free of any tariff. So that this has leveled a lot, and it has made our products more accessible in Mexico. Obviously, our closeness in social, cultural also helps, makes it a great market for U.S. products. Next slide, please. Mexico is the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. So $1.2 trillion economy. Is the second largest in Latin America. As I mentioned already, NAFTA and USMCA has been good to us. Billions of dollars of trade coming back and forth. As many of you may know, Mexico is Arizona's #1 trading partner for the last 20 years that I've been keeping tabs on it. So the opportunity is there, right? That's the main point of this slide. Mexico is the first, second, and third largest destination for merchant export from 32 U.S. states. So that means that is not only Arizona's main export partner, it's another 31 U.S. states as well. Already cover that. Second largest. There is also a lot of opportunities in the U.S. agricultural product section. So I just wanted to mention that. It's not only just aerospace, defense, or products. It's also agricultural products. Next slide, please. And in order to be successful in Mexico, you have to plan ahead, right? It's kind of opening a new market also in the U.S. So there is some similarities, but it also has to be planned. The best way probably to enter the Mexican market is by identifying a sales representative or an agent or distributor. Mexico is a very diverse market, so most firms may need more than one distributor for different locations in Mexico. Mexico is spread out, so you may need to have different distributors for the different regions, depending on the product and on the market sector that it may be. Maybe government, maybe, it depends on what it is, right? It has to be if it's going to be manufacturing, it has to be in the north. Things of that nature have to be planned ahead of time, and we're more than happy to provide the advice, obviously. Mexico buyers are generally price sensitive, so that means that very expensive products may not be as easy to sell. There is a market for everything, but it is something that has to be considered. And next slide, please. I guess the main point on here is that the U.S. Commercial Service has 3 offices in Mexico. We do have an office in Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. We are co-located at the U.S. embassies and consulates in these 3 countries, and we are there to help and see how we can help U.S. companies enter the market and be successful. Next slide, please.
Okay, so Fernando, this is how we can contact you. Is that correct?
Yes. This is my information. There is my phone number, my email. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to having some questions if we have time. Thank you.
Yeah, we can take a question now. We also will have some Q&A at the end. Fernando, I will ask you a question. You mentioned some of the services like Gold Key, et cetera. And I believe it's still there that the Arizona Commerce Authority also has a STEP grant program where we could check with ACA to see if they might be able to help pay for a portion of those services. Is that accurate?
Yes, they actually have they offer 75% reimbursement, but in the only caveat there is that the ACA has also offices in Mexico. So they tend to subsidize the cost of the services, but in other markets where they don't have offices.
And I can tell you, I personally used Gold Key when I was at a prior company, and I've got a client I'll be calling you about who wants to do an embassy event. So we'll talk about that. Well, Fernando, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
If we can go ahead and move to the next slide. Our next presenter is Sandra Donzella. And Sandra, I sure hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I've talked to you a million times. I've never tried to pronounce your last name. Sandra is the Deputy Managing Director for the Western region of the U.S. For the Export-Import Bank, and is also responsible for managing the bank's business development and outreach efforts in the counties of San Diego and Imperial, as well as Northern California and here in Arizona. The Ex-Im Bank in the United States is the official export credit agency of the U.S. government. Ex-Im Bank's mission is to assist in financing the export of U.S. goods and services to international markets. They focus on helping U.S. businesses, U.S. small businesses, and has a dedicated team to assist them with a variety of solutions. So Sandra, I will turn it over to you. You can just say next slide, although it looks like we're getting a black screen for your image. So camera's not working, that's okay, we can still proceed. So take us away, Sandra.
Okay, thank you so much, Tom, to you and Carol for inviting me to be part of today's program. I'm delighted to be here. And I apologize, I am not sure what's happening with my camera. I actually have it on, but I don't know why there's a black background. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to proceed. So as Tom mentioned, my name is Sandra Doncella, and I'm a member of the Import Bank of the United States, or Ex-Im, EXIM, which is how we're better known as. And I'm one of four in our office that are responsible for handling all of the western part of the country. But I'm the only one that's directly responsible for coverage of your beautiful state of Arizona. So if anyone needs additional information about Ex-Im, you'll see all of my contact information at the conclusion of my presentation. And I would encourage all of you to reach out to me if you want to learn more. To give you a quick overview about who we are, Ex-Im is America's official export credit agency. So we are an independent U.S. federal government agency. We're not a bank. We have a long history of almost 90 years as a federal agency. We are headquartered in Washington, D.C. That's where all of the application processing it's done. But to be in closer proximity to the small business community, we also have a network of regional offices across the country. And as I just mentioned earlier, I'm part of that regional office network. And the mission of Ex-Im is very similar to that of our friends at the U.S. Commercial Service, Fernando's organization, which is to support U.S. exports. But we tackle it from a very different perspective, and I'll explain what we do momentarily. But basically, everything we do has to do with export financing. From the buyer's perspective, it's import financing, so that's where the Export-Import Bank comes from. But just to clarify, we do not offer solutions to support imports into the U.S. All of our programs are designed to support U.S. jobs. That's really the main underlying reason why we exist. So it's U.S. jobs through exports. That's very important to us. And as a federal agency, we are also not here to compete with the private sector, but we recognize that often, the private sector, whether it be businesses or the lenders or insurance companies, sometimes the private sector doesn't have the willingness or ability to take certain foreign risks. So we're here to absorb that risk and level the playing field for U.S. businesses when they're trying to capture growth opportunities internationally. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we do, I mentioned we deal with export financing, right? So under that, we have 3 different primary programs depending on who needs financing, what is the underlying, what are the underlying export items being sold, and what also are the needs of the international buyer. So one of our programs is the working capital loan guarantee, and that's designed to address situations where you, the U.S. exporter, when you need financing to either be able to manufacture the items that will be exported or to purchase them. So if you need financing or solution would be the working capital loan guarantee. And I'll explain more on that momentarily. Conversely, if your buyers abroad, if your international customers are asking you for flexibility on the payment terms, meaning they need credit, maybe they want you to ship and give them 30 or 60-day terms, then our solution will be export credit insurance. And I highlight the word insurance because this is Ex-Im Bank's most demanded program. Most businesses that are engaged in exporting, it's very likely that they'll develop a need for it at some point in the future, even if it's just with one buyer. So it's a quite popular program at Ex-Im Bank. And what it does is provide risk protection in the event of non-payment by international buyers. And it also can help companies improve cash flow and increase their ability to borrow more from a bank. And I'll explain all of that momentarily, but insurance is really designed to give you risk protection when buyers abroad are asking for more flexibility on the credit, on the payment terms, so when they want credit. And for those businesses that are exporting equipment, machinery, big ticket items, if you're selling to buyers located in emerging markets or developing countries where access to a multi-year loan is more expensive or may not necessarily even be available depending on the amount, we also have solutions in the form of loan guarantees primarily, where we can help a buyer obtain say a 5-year loan so they can finance their purchase of equipment from you. Next slide, please. Contrary to what some of you may have learned, may have read on the press, Ex-Im Bank does a lot with small businesses. We basically can offer our programs to companies of all sizes, small, medium, and large. But we're very proud of the strong support that we consistently have offered to small businesses. And in fact, year after year, for at least the last 3 decades, most of the transactions that we process in a given year and approve are directly supporting small businesses. Last year, for example, was almost 90% or 88% to be exact. Of all the applications we received were submitted directly by small businesses. And more than half of those were for amounts under $500,000. And in total, in terms of the total approvals we did collectively across all of our programs and nationwide, we did $1.5 billion in total financing approvals for small businesses. So small businesses are very important to us. Next slide, please. And in terms of what we do, I mentioned earlier that one of the things that we do, a most demanded program, is insurance. And it's what it is a fairly straightforward concept. It's not a loan to you or to your buyer. It's insurance, risk protection, or peace of mind when you make the decision to offer credit internationally. So for example, you ship the product, you invoice your customer, and let's assume you're giving them a 30-day credit term to pay you. So essentially, when you create that invoice, you've generated a foreign account receivable. And that's what Ex-Im would be insuring. And we can insure 90 or 95% of the invoiced amount, depending on which option you're interested in pursuing. We offer 4 different policies. Pretty much we have an option for just about anyone. We can insure one buyer, if that's all you have to insure at this time, or we can insure all or most of your portfolio. And insurance can also be a very powerful marketing tool. It can help you capture opportunities in global markets. Why? Because buyers increasingly have some expectation of flexibility on the payment terms. And this is very relevant, especially after COVID, especially after the supply chain issues where increasingly many buyers don't want to tie up their cash flow in advance on the full amount of the sale. And for that reason, they're looking at you, the exporter, to offer them that flexibility and perhaps give them 30, 45, or 60 days to pay. Although after COVID, we did see an increase in applications for 90-day terms. So we can go up to 6 months, depending on the nature of what's being exported. If it's, for example, perishable, then we wouldn't. If it's equipment or machinery, we could go up to 1 year if you're willing to go that long. But insurance basically will apply in situations where the buyer doesn't want to pay you cash in advance and they want credit on a portion of the sale, or in some cases on the full amount. And it can also be used to as a financing tool. So with the risk minimized, not only you can capture more growth opportunities, but if you start to extend credit to various buyers, it could be that that puts a dent on your own cash flow. And all of our insurance policies can be assigned to a bank. And most lenders will include in the borrowing base foreign accounts receivables, but generally only if they are insured. And the majority of the lenders that are willing to do that tend to advance up to 90% of the value of that insured foreign account receivable. So for instance, you may have $100,000 outstanding to a buyer in let's say Mexico, and you're giving them 2 months to pay you. Shortly after you create that invoice, you could go to your lender and borrow $90,000. So you're not waiting the full 2 months for the payment to come in from the buyer. And that's how it can help you maximize cash flow. So those are the main benefits of the insurance. Here, there's a link to a brief video on our homepage that can give you a better perspective of how the program works and its benefits if you need further clarifications. Next slide, please. And in terms of what we cover just about, I'm not, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip some of these slides, but we basically cover just about anything that could go wrong except for disputes. So when it comes to dispute, if the buyer wanted white and you ship red, for instance, we don't have the resources to judge who's wrong or right on a dispute situation. But if the buyer, for instance, is having cash flow difficulties, say there's a downturn in the economy, maybe there's a devaluation in the Mexican peso, and that triggers non-payment. Those are the things that XM would cover, or any political action, say foreign exchange restrictions, for example, that may prevent the buyer from making payment. Next slide, please. And next, I'm going to skip over this one. If anybody wants to learn about how it really works, the application process, feel free to contact me. To qualify, we do, because the mission is to support jobs, the buyer, the items that are being exported do need to be made in the US and have over 50% US content. We measure that at cost. So the cost of the materials, the components, the parts, and labor, usually US labor will bring it up substantially. So if over 50% of all the costs, including overhead, represent US incurred costs, then XM would be able to support it. Also, part of our mandate is to make sure that for every transaction we support, that we get reasonable reassurance of repayment. And for that reason, we do require a track record on both the part of the seller and the buyer. So ideally a 3-year operating history that's sales producing. Having said that, if you're just looking for an insurance policy, it's usually easier for XM to be able to waive that 3-year requirement as long as you have at least 1 year and you already are generating sales. We also require a Dun & Bradstreet number and an active CM.gov registration and a unique entity identifier number. That's fairly a new requirement for XM Bank. And we've written a blog about it. We also have a team, a small team that is assisting our customers comply with that. So if you need more information on that particular requirement, feel free to reach out to me. And here's an example of a local company in Arizona, in Scottsdale, that has used XM's insurance policy for 10 years now. They have an option that's called the Express policy, which is for small businesses. And under this policy, our premium rate, for instance, is a little over half of 1%, is 0.65%. So when a $30,000 sale, for example, it only costs $195 to insure it, and it has zero deductible. And over the life of this policy, we've been able to support this company's export activity in the 8-digit figures. Next slide, please. And then in terms of addressing the financing needs of U.S. exporters, so if you need financing, say you get a transaction and you're asking yourself, how am I going to finance this? I need working capital. Or maybe you're already growing internationally and that growth is put a dent on your own cash flow. We have a solution called the Working Capital Loan Guarantee. I underscore guarantee because this is not a direct loan product from XM. It's a guarantee of repayment of principal and interest on loans that are made available by a network of lenders that participate in this program. And our guarantee is available at 90%. So in other words, by co-signing on behalf of the exporter, the goal is to make it easier for you to find financing to support your export activities. And we don't have any minimum or maximum amounts. So it's best to check with your lender or give me a call and I can provide some more guidance as to what banks that work with our programs usually like to use. Next slide, please. And actually, let's just go to the conclusion of my presentation, my contact information, so the audience can see it. If you want to learn more, here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. And thank you again for having me and for your attention. And sorry I went over time.
No, thank you, Sandra. We appreciate all of the information. I don't see any questions in Q&A right now, but we'll circle back to Q&A. Sandra, I also sent you a chat on something you might do to check your camera. So when we get to Q&A, maybe we can get it working. You know, the SBDC is thrilled to have XM Bank here, and we have been having some conversations for a couple months now about how we can do even more together and make sure that we at the SBDC can make sure that all of you small business owners out there have access and information you need to take full advantage of all their amazing offerings. So thank you again, Sandra. We'll go ahead and move to the next slide and bring up Mr. Gustavo Ceballos. Gustavo's career in global logistics spans 3 decades and boasts broad-ranging experience in the U.S. and Mexican customs brokerage, ocean, air, and ground transportation, warehousing, and distribution. Finish that sentence. He has dedicated more than half his professional life in the automotive sector, forwarding and developing the country of Mexico. As president of the company, GEOS Global, he is responsible for the growth and development of all elements that make GEOS unique: people, partners, finances, and technology. He applies a wealth of trade insight he has acquired over his long career, creating a sustainable and welcoming company culture that attracts the best talent and delivers top-notch personalized service. Past employers have included Expeditors International, Emotrans, and more. He holds a business degree from the University of San Francisco. And we're just thrilled to have Gustavo here. We want to make sure that we brought a different perspective this time than we did in Canada by including this type of company and a small business that is a successful one right here in Arizona. So Gustavo, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much, Tom and Carol, for inviting us to this important conference. I just want to talk a little bit. I heard it's going to be a little bit repetitive on some things, but I'm just going to talk about the clear advantages that we have in trading with Mexico. It's the United States #2 trading partner behind Canada, but last 2 months it was #1. So it went to #1 on top of Canada, 125 billion, January and February. We also talked a little bit about the NAFTA, the USMCA, which was previously NAFTA. Now there's no duties on electronic products. There used to be a certificate of origin, very, very strict. Now you only have to send 9 data elements on any form. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. The increase to the minimus of origin 10%, which is so the originating product, the non-originating product was 7% before. Now it's 10%. So it's so if you have, let's say, some textile product and you have 10% that originates from Taiwan, it's still gonna qualify for USMCA. It's more transparent and all the rules have been simplified. The NAFTA was, you know, I can talk for 1 week about NAFTA. It's very complicated. Now it became more simple. And then the other advantage is that nearshoring with the high risk that we have with China as a partner, nearshoring will increase the market with Mexico by $30 billion. So more and more companies are coming down to Mexico because they have a lot of young people, a big market for workers at any level, engineers, factory workers, and so forth. So it's going to increase the opportunities a lot. Next file, please. Next slide. So we're going to talk about what you need to know on documentation that you need for Mexico. It's very simple. I'll try to make it as simple as possible for the exporter. Next slide, please. So minimum document requirements. And number one, you need an export power of attorney versus a shipper letter of instruction. I'm going to talk about those two. So if you don't feel comfortable giving your forwarder an export power of attorney, you can do it by transaction. The way you do it by transaction is a shipper's letter of instructions. So it's a transactional POA, but it's a lot easier to do an open export power of attorney. You need to transmit, or your forwarder needs to transmit automated export system. That's kind of like the entry for an export. That's notifying the Census Bureau what you're shipping, and has to do with licensing and just for data and statistics of exports. Shipper documents will be the commercial invoice and packing list. We're going to go over what is required on each of them. Forwarders documents will be the bill of lading. I'm going to focus on ground shipping because that's the easiest way because of the closeness of Mexico. Additional international documentation that we will requesting. The 9 data elements instead of the certificate of origin when you're claiming US, Mexico, Canada trade agreement. And then we'll talk about some temporary export options, which is a certificate of registration and ATA carnets, right? And I'm just gonna go over a little bit of export compliance because that's something that I can go over in a whole week. So next slide, please. So the documentation here, I have a little chart of who's responsible for each one. It's a written authorization, obviously comes from the shipper. Commercial invoice comes from the shipper. Packing list from the shipper, and bill of lading is the forwarder's responsibility, and customs manifest also is the forwarder. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I have a document that's a sample of the written authorization for the export power of attorney to give the forwarder authorization to file AES on behalf of the U.S. principal party of interest or the exporter. issue additional export documentation on behalf of the shipper, like certificates of origin, on this case, the 9 elements, pro forma invoices, and carnets. It never expires. Remember this, it never expires unless it's revoked in writing. So if you want to change forwarders, you have to notify the other forwarder when you're revoking the power of attorney. Next slide, please. Thank you. Written authorization. This is a copy of the shipper letter of instruction. This is what I mentioned, that it would be an individual authorization per transaction, but it's still needed because it's required with every shipment that has a value of $2,500 or greater in a single schedule B or HTS number. Let me explain that. So let's say you have two items. One is $1,000 and is classified under a different classification as the second item, which is $4,500. So you only have to do AES on the one that's over $2,500, and the other one does not require. Okay, so it's best practice to use on all shipments. Acts as a single shipment authorization, as I mentioned, must be signed. This is very important, and it's recommended for all exports. Next slide, please. Automated export system. So this is a joint venture between U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the Census Bureau, the Bureau of Industry and Security, and then the Directorate of Defense Trade Control and other federal agencies in the export trade community. It's required for all commodity codes that have a value greater than 2,500. So the Schedule B, it's simple. It's in the classification on export. We call it Schedule B. Is not a harmonized tariff schedule. Central point through which export data is submitted and reviewed by U.S. CBP. AES is a nationwide system operational at all ports and all methods of transportation, air, ocean, and ground, and rail. Okay, next slide, please. We have our commercial invoice. I'm gonna go fast through them. It has to have the full exporter information, the importer, the full information, date of export, invoice number, PO number, or sales order, term of payments, term of sales, Incoterms. I'm not gonna go very deep into Incoterms, but these are terms of sales. They're not contractual agreements. They're just noting the responsibility of the buyer and the seller, right? For instance, a EXW, which means X works, means that the buyer is responsible for picking up at the seller's warehouse. So it's responsible for all the seller is just going to load it into a truck, and they're responsible for the whole trajectory, whether they want to insure it or not. It's the buyer's responsibility, right? Description of goods. That's another presentation that I need to go over for a few hours. So on the Incoterms. Description of goods. You need to put in the exact description, the Schedule B code, country of origin, unit price, and total. And it has to be signed in blue ink, so it reflects that it's an original signature. Next slide, please. The packing list is basically how the freight is packed in the mode of transportation. It has more detail than the commercial invoice, except for price. Just how many pieces, how many boxes. So it's though no pricing should be listed. it has to match the markings on the cargo. Next slide, please. Okay, so the documentation, the bill of lading, for the forwarder creates that. So you just basic shipper consignee and information from the packing list. All right, next slide, please. Additional documentation considerations, the temporary export options. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. The ATA carnet, which is like a passport for cargo. Letters of credit, wood packing material requirements. When you ship pallets to Mexico or anywhere in the world, they need to be treated with fire, and it has to have an official stamp because they kill all the bugs that live on the wood. Additional documents and requirements are requested for export, right? How we can help you with that, but there's different industries that require different products that require different documents, like if it was food items or chemicals or hazmat materials. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the specific 9 items that we need to transmit to on AES for instead of a certificate of origin are listed right here. You know, I'm not going to go too much into depth, but it's basically all the information that the invoice has, and it just needs to have originate from Mexico, Canada, and the US. All right, next slide, please. So this is the ATA carnet. Apart from the certificate of origin, it's like it's a merchandise passport. So right now, me and my partner are in a trade show in Mexico City. So let's say you wanna take your samples into another country, into Mexico. You have an option to open what is called a carnet. It has unlimited exit and entries into the US and foreign countries. It has not every country in the world participates in this. Only 86 countries. I have a list if you're interested. Eliminates the value-added taxes. No, you don't pay anything. No import bonds. There's only a fee to the forwarder or broker that you have to pay. Simplifies customs procedures, a destination and origin country. Re-entry facilitates re-entry into the U.S. by eliminating the need to register the goods with U.S. Customs and Border Protections. It is used in place of Form 4455. So 4455 is a temporary export also from the U.S. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is our information. If you need additional information on any items that we talk about on the documentation or the ATA carnets or any question you might have, depending on your industry of your product, which is food products or chemicals, so they have different requirements. You can, if you want a quote, you can send us an email that's on the bottom, quotes@geosglobal.com, or you can call either of us, Mauro or myself. We're there to help. We're based in Tempe.
Perfect. Thank you, Fernando, and I appreciate you being here. It's always so much fun for us to have a small business, especially one that has interacted with the SBDC for so long. So I'll go ahead and ask, Sandra, I'd ask you to turn your camera on, but it's not working. But at least I should turn your mic on, as well as Fernando, your camera and mic. And we'll see if we've got a few minutes left before we go in. If there's any questions out there for anybody about any of this. And you can put them in the Q&A tab, or at this point, you can go ahead and put them in chat as well. We'll see if there's any questions out there. Fernando, I got to tell you, I'm sorry, Gustavo, I got to tell you, you embarrassed me. I have been saying Carnet for years. So now I know it's Carnet. Oh, you're muted. That's probably good. You're probably making fun of me.
No, it's French. It's French.
Well, whatever. I don't speak French. That's okay. So any questions out there for Commercial Services, Exim Bank, or GIS Global? Seeing any immediate, maybe you just overwhelm them with the amazing amount of information you each provided. You know, we're talking about a couple programs we're going to do later in the year. One of them is a where to go to grow panel when it comes to export. And you've got some of that group right here. So if you are considering export or already exporting, want to find out how to do it better, grow, succeed more with it, you know, help get that financing, that important insurance that we heard about. These are the folks that can help you. And we will be distributing a PDF of this. And Karen can tell us at the end. I think we'll also have some information on that online. I think if you want to receive a PDF, go ahead and email and we'll give you that information. So I don't see any immediate questions, but we'll have you just stay with, a couple questions did just pop up. Contact info, your contact info is on the slide, so we'll do that. Any suggested tools to identify product price in Mexico? Anybody want to tackle that? Gustavo or Fernando? I think Fernando, you touched on this.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this, but a good suggestion would be a website similar to Amazon. Amazon is in Mexico also, and it skips my mind right now, but it's a Amazon. In fact, Amazon it's a good option.
Mercado Libre, maybe one?
Yes. Mercado Libre, exactly. Thank you, Fernando.
On US commercial service website, they have a country book, and then there's a link for you to use define the price to every single country which they provided service base. I can share with you the link after today's webinar. They have a formula there.
Perfect. That's Carol, one of our experts, counselors here. And you know, in addition, one of the things we always talk about, whether export or anything else, is the importance of customer discovery. And we heard about from Fernando today the various tools that they have, like Gold Key and other events where you can do some customer discovery, and international partner searches where you can, you know, talk to folks. That's another great way to explore that. So we have a couple more questions. Actually, one more. Just we've had a couple of people sending praise, saying that'd be great. Thanks. So I'll keep an eye on.
I guess one comment in there, Tom, it would be that Mexico has a lot of products already. So product, pricing product is very competitive. So if somebody's a distributor, a third or fourth hand distributor, it's going to be tough to compete in Mexico just because the price is going to be so high already, with shipping, with price markup, so for at every tier. So in order to compete, I think it's going to be easier for companies to be the producers or exclusive distributor for Mexico, for example. If not, it's going to be hard, because again, Gustavo can probably provide a little bit more guidance here, but there is also a consideration into there's going to have to pay, the price of the product is going to be increased by around 20%, Gustavo, with the IVA and with the fees of the broker once you cross product into Mexico, so whatever the price is here in Mexico is going to be probably a bit higher, given into account the dollar peso difference. So just a comment.
No, that makes sense. I used to do some export and for a couple of different companies, including a pet supply company. It was always a challenge, and we did find that key partnerships, whether it was your freight forwarder, broker, but in-country key partnerships were also very important to understand that. And it may require some slight changes to your product. You may not be able to have the exact same product you produce and export. So you want to, as I said, that customer discovery, understanding that customer. There's another question coming in. Do food retailers and supermarkets in Mexico do direct import, or do most of them rely on distributors who import the product?
I will probably say that it depends on the product. It depends on the sector, right? If I'm not sure about the food industry, but at least in the product sector, somebody has to be the importer of record, which most of the times have to be probably a Mexican entity. If you're selling to the government, for example, you must have a distributor. You must have somebody that is going to sell that on your behalf to the government, for example. That's when you really need somebody there. I'm just thinking that for supermarkets and retailers, you may be able to import the product directly and ship directly to the supermarket, but I'm not sure. I probably will find out. Please contact me. I'm pretty sure having a local or domestic presence in Mexico is going to be a huge help. And just to tackle the first one there, best practices. Mexico is a very it's an open connection, right? I mean, people like to see each other in person. So doing business remotely may not work in Mexico. So it takes time to do business in Mexico. It's gonna take many trips, many face-to-face visits, a couple of quinceañeras and a couple of weddings maybe, in order to warm up the relationship. I guess that's still true.
Yeah, my experience in doing business in Mexico when I was doing that was very relationship based, building and spending time together, and that in-person connection is very important. But the other aspect of Mexico, because I did do products that were going into supermarkets, so there was some direct, but there's also that indirect export where you may have U.S. customers buying the product that have divisions in Mexico, and working through them may be another option. Right. Well, thank you for your questions. We're going to go ahead and finish up here. So if you would like to work with us, we'd love to work with you. Please, if you haven't not already with the counselor, please complete a request for counseling form at this link. And what will happen, you'll get a contact from our esteemed colleague, Karen, who will set you up with a counselor. You'll get your initial counseling session, follow-on sessions, and help you track your business goals. We do have locations all around the Valley, and many of us are also working remotely. So counseling, though, is by appointment only. It's not a drop-in. So we can go ahead to the next slide. And then there is my contact information as well as Carol's contact information. And you'll be getting these slides, so you'll be able to follow that way. And then see if there's any more questions. Don't see any more questions. So Karen, we do have an evaluation that's coming out. And how is that evaluation coming? Is it immediate, or how's that work, Karen?
That comes out tomorrow.
Okay. So you will all receive a evaluation request tomorrow. We'd love to hear from you. That's how we continue to provide programs like this and make them more and more relevant every time we do. Again, please join me in just thanking Gustavo, Sandra, and Fernando for joining us. You help bring such robust content information. We truly appreciate it, and wish you all and everyone out there a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.